Alright everybody, welcome back to episode 2 of my Unreal Engine Pro game development class. Sorry it's been a while since the last episode, I've been traveling a bit, and these take a long time to make. So if you appreciate the amount of effort I'm putting in on these, please subscribe to the channel so you can keep up with the next one. Like the video, and leave me a comment letting me know some feedback, because that's the only way I'm going to get better. So you'll notice a few changes to the start of this video. The first one is I did some planning in our Jira board so I can kind of map out what the episodes are going to be. It was just easier for me to do this in Jira versus doing it in an external notes program and then adding the tasks manually with each episode. It also makes the videos a little bit shorter, which I think is nice. But so as you can see here, what we're going to be doing is downloading Blender, installing Visual Studio, and then downloading and building Unreal Engine from source. So right now, just take a minute to pause the video and create 3 tasks for these 3 things. And don't worry about filling out the description or anything. Just make sure you put it under that Get Started epic that we made last time. Alright, so right now, pause the video and resume when you have that all set. And you'll see here that I drag in that prepare P4 for check-in task, but don't worry about that, I take it out later. That's going to be more time consuming than I initially thought of here, so we're just going to put that into the next episode. But for now, we're going to start writing the descriptions. So we have our download Blender 3.5, and it has to be 3.5, so we'll write that here. So download Blender version 3.5. And we'll also include adding this Mr. Mannequin Tools extension. So I'll show you guys why this extension is so great once we get into it. But just know that animating the mannequin in Unreal is something we're going to have to do from time to time. And this plugin makes it much, much easier. And this plugin is a little bit older, unfortunately, so it doesn't work with the newer versions of Blender. So we'll have to go into the archives and make sure we download 3.5. We don't need any of the new features in Blender for our purposes, so it'll be fine. And as you can see, we write here, we'll call this done when we have the plugin downloaded correctly and we can add the template to a project in Blender. Then we'll write up the description for our install Visual Studio task. And this we'll just write install Visual Studio 2022 and configure for use with Unreal. And again, it's good to be detailed in these descriptions, so we'll try to do that. And we'll call this done when Visual Studio is ready to work with Unreal. And it's an awkward thing to try to phrase, so you'll see me here trying to come up with the best way to put it. And you'll see that I eventually just go with when it's ready to roll. And we kind of know what that means, so I think it'll be fine. Alright, so we'll save that. And then we'll move on to download Unreal Engine 5.3.2. And you'll see me here change it to download and build Unreal 5.3.2. And you just double click on the text there for the title and it'll let you change the title, which is actually pretty great. So you'll see here I write download Unreal Engine 5.3.2 from the Epic Games GitHub repo. And we'll have to unzip the repo on the storage drive, which for me will be the D drive. And then we'll build the solution. And this part is a little time consuming, but we'll call this done when we can package a project in the engine. Because that's kind of the best way of figuring out if everything worked. And if we're seeing issues at that point, then we need to address them right away before we start in the process of checking everything into source control. And you can see here me reading the description I wrote for the P4 task. and deciding to move it to the next video, so don't worry about that until next time. And with that, we're pretty much all set with our Jira board. We just need to go over to board, like you can see on the screen now, and we can drag download Blender 3.5 from to do into in progress. And at that point, we can get going. So to install Blender, we'll open up a tab in our browser of choice and Google install Blender 3.5. And now we'll hop into here. And it's actually kind of irritating. This install link just gives you a download to the regular version. So we have to scroll all the way down and click this previous versions. And then we'll click download any Blender. And then we'll scroll all the way down to 3.5. And we will click on the appropriate option, which is the Windows x64 MSI. And now that we have Blender installed, we can click on our little link there and open up the installer and just do default options here. So just next, install, and we'll wait. And eventually it's going to ask for permissions. So we just give it the permissions it asks for. And it should finish up here pretty soon. But yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, Blender is a program where you can make animations, you can make 3D models, you can do all sorts of things. We'll mainly just use it for making animations. So just waiting here. But once this is done, we'll get into getting the plugin downloaded, which is also a pretty easy task. So don't be afraid of this window popping up. Just don't X out of it. Just let it do its thing. And then finish. And now we're going to make a folder just on our D drive. You can put it wherever you're storing your files for this project. And just call it Blender Extensions. You can name it whatever you want, but this is where I like to keep my Blender extensions, just to keep them organized. So we'll go back to Chrome and Google download Mr. Mannequin tools. And this first Gumroad link is the one that you want. And you type in a fair price. It will work with 0, as I show here, but Jim Croovy made a really good tool. So once you download it and use it, feel free to donate to him. I have donated in the past, so I don't feel bad about putting 0 here. So we go to there and we download it, and we have the zip file, and it'll show up in your downloads. And then we'll just throw it into the Blender extensions. And in Blender, the extensions are zip files, so don't feel like you need to unzip it or do any of that stuff. But now we need to actually open Blender and get this extension installed. So we'll open Blender just by typing it in the search bar. And we'll just click next and get out of this. And I'll delete the default cube by pressing the delete key after clicking on it. Then we'll go edit preferences, then to add-ons, and install. And then we'll find our Blender extensions folder. And then we click on that zip file and install add-on. And hopefully everything goes well, and it did. We just check it there, and we're all good. And don't worry about deleting these, it's not necessary. But we'll go to add Mr. Mannequin's templates, and we want to add the mannequin epic, and just press OK. And don't worry about what I'm doing here. This isn't a Blender tutorial yet, but I'm just going to demonstrate why this is such a powerful tool, and I would honestly not know what to do without it. So see how we can click on this little wrist there and just drag it around? This process makes animating so easy compared to otherwise, where you're moving around individual bones. So we're all set now, so we'll move it through review and then into done. And we'll basically add a comment that we're all set. And again, just be happy we have that plugin. Trust me, it's going to make a big difference later on. And then now we're going to get into installing Visual Studio, so we can drag that over to in progress, open up a tab, and search for install Visual Studio. And we want this one, the Visual Studio 2022 IDE. We can scroll past this ad for Copilot and download Community 2022. You have to pay for the other ones. So we'll click Visual Studio Setup there. And once the installer is ready, we need to select the components we want to install. And we need .NET desktop development with C++, and universal Windows platform development, and last but not least, game development with C++, and install. And eventually it'll complete, and it'll automatically open it. And we can skip signing in for now, just use dark theme. Just looks a lot better. And now we can press continue without code and do our initial setup. And on second thought, this is going to be easier to do once we have the UE5 solution in here. So after I struggle with the menus for a second, we're just going to X out of this and call this done. But we still need to update the description to make sure this is right for what we're doing. So we'll just switch this to install Visual Studio. Get rid of that configure bit and move the download UE task into in progress. So now we're going to navigate over to another tab and we'll go to GitHub. And hopefully you're already logged in like I am. And we added ourselves to the GitHub repo for Epic Games last time. So we'll do under Teams, Epic Games /developers. And it didn't work, so we'll click it again and see what happens. And now we'll go to repositories. And we want Unreal Engine. And we are going to end up going over to branches. So tags is basically a specific state and time, while branches is a software development branch. And we're going to opt for the 5.3 branch. So we'll get any last minute fixes that wouldn't be present on the 5.3.2 tag. So you click code and then download zip like I did there, and then we'll wait for it to complete. So now that the download has completed, we need to extract it, and you want to extract it to the top level of wherever you're going to be storing your engine. So for me, that'll be the D drive. And the reason for this is because you don't want the file names to be long. You can run into issues. So right click, extract all, and then we just want the top level D drive. And for you, it might be the C drive, depending on your configuration, but we press extract. And again, I'm going to skip ahead until this is done. Just a heads up, this takes a really long time. So feel free to grab a book or something while you're waiting for all this to happen. And even though the video might be short, just know that the process takes a very long time. But anyways, once it's finally done, we want to rename it to UE underscore 5 underscore 3 underscore 2 ish. And we'll go in here. And we'll right click and press open in terminal. And we want to do /setup.bat. And you can press tab to complete that. And this is going to take a while. And also, it will ask for permissions a couple of times. So make sure you're giving it the permissions it needs. And next up, we want to type /generate_project_files.bat. And again, you can press tab to autocomplete. And once that's done, we can move on to the next step. And apologies if the editing looks a little weird here, but I realized I forgot to do something very important, so we're going to do it now. So we'll open up a file explorer, and we need to find our original zip file that we extracted. So just click on it, Control X to cut, and put it somewhere safe. So I'm just going to put it at the top level D drive. So paste that in. And we're going to call it something that we're going to know what it is very easily. So UE underscore 5 underscore 3 underscore 2 ish underscore original zip. And we can just close out of this at our leisure. But the reason why having this is so important is because in the future, if we need to do an engine upgrade, we need to basically get a diff from our original engine that we installed from GitHub and our current engine that we've made whatever changes to that we have. So without that original file, it's pretty much impossible to get a one-for-one differential. So just keep that handy and we'll move on. And again, I apologize for the clunkiness of that editing section, but it's the best way I could fix that mistake of forgetting to do that. But anyways, now we're going to go through the Visual Studio setup step that we skipped earlier. So we go to our project file and then we do right click, open with Microsoft Visual Studio 2022 on that UE5.sln file. And then eventually this will load up and we can start configuring things. All right, so we're almost loaded. And I'm just going to be flipping back and forth through the documentation to make sure we have everything the way Unreal says we're supposed to have it. So first we'll go to Tools and then Customize. And Standard toolbar should be checked already, but check it if it's not. So then go to Commands and click the Toolbar radio button and then Standard. And scroll down here until we get to Solution Configurations and press Modify Selection and go to 200. And then we want to go into Tools, Options. And we can click into Projects and Solutions and get rid of that Always Show Error List one on top. Then we can close it down. Go into where your project file is, go to Engine, Extras, and then Unreal VS, and we want VS 2022. Then we just double click on that and kind of let it do its thing. And we want to install. It should find your install Visual Studio. But yeah, this plugin is very helpful when developing in Unreal, so we want to make sure we have it. Should be pretty quick. Okay, so then we close this. Now we can go back to our D drive, to our project folder, and we can right click and then open with Visual Studio 2022. You can select for it to always open with Visual Studio, but I use Rider when I'm developing by myself, so for me it'll just be once. Alright, so now we'll give it this a second to load up. This is good practice because it tends to take a second before it's ready to do anything. So we click that little uh, arrow at the bottom there, then add and remove buttons, then customize, toolbars, and we want Unreal VS checked. So now we can see it, set the project to UE5, and then we don't have any options there yet. And we can press right click on that UE5 and then build. And just sit tight here. This is going to take a while, so get a book or whatever you're doing to kill some time. But yeah, everything should work, and I will come back once the build is done. Alright, so our build is done, and you should see succeeded right there. So we're looking good. And now we're going to click this local Windows debugger, which will actually launch the engine. So we'll wait for this to do its thing, and eventually the engine will launch. And I'm just going to skip ahead again. Oh wait, actually it's going now, so we'll wait it out. Yeah, and don't worry about all this stuff that's popping up. It's just some profiling stuff. Not in our concerns right now. So now we'll just wait a little bit for it to do its thing. And again, be patient. It might look like my stuff is going faster, but I'm cutting ahead sometimes, so. Alright, so now we can see the allow permissions, and we're going to do that twice. It's weird that that isn't getting caught in the recording software most of the time, but right there it did, so that's good. And we'll keep waiting, let it do its thing. Again, don't close this, don't press the little stop button. And I actually am going to skip ahead, so see you in a bit. Alright, and now we're going to see the little U pop up, so we can click that. And this part is going to take a while, so we'll just jump ahead until it's done loading. And now we're met with this dashboard. We want to click third person, then C++. And then we want to go to our top level folder, so that UE5-ish. And we want that to be our project location, and that's very important, so please do it. And same with the project name. We want this just to be hide, seek, survive, like that in Pascal case. Then we can press create. And again, if you're following along, please get this part right, or else you're going to run into issues later. You would assume it's very easy to move a project or rename a project, but it's not going to be, and you're pretty much going to have to start over if you screw this part up. So just pay attention. Alright, so we'll let this load. This is actually pretty quick, so I'm not going to skip ahead. And also I want to show Visual Studio is going to freak out here in a second. So we have that the solution has been modified and it kind of crashes. But this is no big deal. This is what you're expecting. So we'll ignore. And we can close it down. And just to make sure everything is good, we're going to go into our project folder. So the hide, seek, survive. show more options, and generate Visual Studio project files. So this will just refresh our solution so everything's right. Then we can go back into there and open up the solution. And again, just give it a minute to do its thing. And now we can see under games that hide, seek, survive. So right click. Well, actually, we're just going to change that to hide, seek, survive. We can get rid of that and just press left click. And then this will get going and it'll build the project and launch it. But see how you can see it under games there? If we just used the location that Epic suggested when we created the project, then we wouldn't be able to see it under games there. So it's, again, very important that we put it where we did. The main reason, though, is for source control purposes, but we'll get into that next time. And this is going to take a while, so I'm going to skip ahead again. And eventually our profiling stuff will come back, and we'll see this. And now we need to wait for this to load, compile all the shaders, all that good stuff. And that'll take a while again, so I'll skip ahead. And after a while, the editor will open, and we'll have this little test map. And you can press the play button and just see that it's working. But we want to go to Platforms, Windows, and go to our D drive, right-click, New Folder, and you can call this Hide, Seek, Survive, Builds. Okay, select folder, and you can see that it's starting to package the project. And the reason why we're doing this is because when we go to put this game on Steam, we need to submit a packaged build. And we want to make sure that out of the box, before we've done anything, that the packaging process is working without giving us any errors. Because it's a lot easier to diagnose issues when you know, oh, okay, I've only changed this part of the code and now packaging is failing. Otherwise, we would not be sure if packaging was ever working. So we're just going to let this go. And it'll take a while again, so I'll skip ahead until it's done. Alright, so our build was successful. So that's good. And then we'll go over to our D drive, and we'll click into Hide, Seek, Survive, Builds, Windows, and we need to close down everything. Okay, so now we can click into the build. If you try to run the build while the editor is up, it's going to fry your PC. Like, it'll probably be fine, but better to just close everything down. And eventually we'll see the little U again. We want to press allow. And now we're in the build. So we're looking good. So it all built. And we can go into our Jira board and triumphantly move that task through review and into done. Alright, so that was a solid episode. I know it was a lot of material and it took a really long time, but that was a big accomplishment for us. And to be honest, the next one is going to be 10 times worse because we're going to start working with source control. So brace yourself for that one. I know it's going to take me a long time to record. So just let me know in the comments if you have any issues that I didn't mention in this video. Everything should work the same, but if not, just let me know. And with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Later.